words. My title, I changed the title a little bit. It's opportunities and challenges at the container port. To be honest, I'm not a bunkering guy. I'm not expert in green things. I didn't even know about bunkering up until I came across Rich Bigfoot 2 years ago. And then I studied a lot and I know a little bit of reshaping and fuels and bunkering. So my presentation today is not that high level. It's quite fit for people who doesn't know much about the fuels and bunkering at container port. I found that it's quite different from bunkering for ordinary bulkers and tankers. So my focus today is about bunkering at the container port. It's quite different. So what's the opportunities for Busan? I told you I'm not expert in the fuel oil bunkering. So while I was studying, I found out that there are 4 major oil hubs in the world: Rotterdam, Fujairah, Singapore, Houston. And do you know what I found? What I found is that they have huge petrochemical complexes in their port. So maybe that's the reason they have cheap bunkering prices. So I signed up for the fee-paying homepage, providing bunkering prices across the globe. It's a ship and bunker site. It's a fee-paying. I never paid anything about in internet, but I paid to prepare for prices. So this is the price of bunkering at Busan. It's the dollar per ton. So Singapore, Fujairah, Houston, Rotterdam, major 4 is in the middle, and Rotterdam at the cheapest, at the lowest, and Singapore in the middle, and Busan, $9 more expensive than Singapore. Seattle, quite expensive. For me, it was surprising to know that Busan is $54 more expensive than Rotterdam. So maybe it's no wonder that vessels go to Rotterdam for bunkering. What about HFO? This is a low sulfur fuel. HFO, Busan, like $25 more expensive than Singapore. $45 for major, for average, and $63 more expensive than Rotterdam. I told you that liner shipping bunkering is quite different from bunkering in other tanker or bulk industry. The biggest two, the top 2 east-west container trade is TP, Trans-Pacific, and Asia-Europe. And if you look at the routing, well, Singapore, Rotterdam, Singapore, they're on the container route. So it's not surprising that Singapore and Rotterdam are the top 2 bunkering places. Not Houston and Fujairah. They are not on the main container truck route. So I dig deeper. So there are around 70 container weekly services around the world connecting Asia and North America. We call Trans-Pacific, called TP. And only 15 TP weekly services, call that Singapore. There are only 5 for Houston. But if you look at Asia-Europe, there are only 30 weekly services connecting Asia-Europe, and 20 Europe service, call that Singapore, and 17 services, call that Rotterdam. So, in Europe service, most of the container vessels bunker in these 2 places, Singapore and Rotterdam. But in TP, well, there are some routes that they don't call it Singapore. Right here, no Singapore, no Singapore. Maybe this one. So there are some bunkering opportunities for Busan. Because they have no option. They have to either bunker at where? Long Beach, Shanghai, but Busan is cheaper than Shanghai. So we have some opportunities. And Busan has a lot of feeder network. We have 287 weekly services and 52 with Japan, 52 with China, and 71 with Japan. And if you look at top 2 Asian ports, there are any other ports than nearing number 70. Look at here. The highest one is 37 in Shanghai. So we have a very high level of weekly service with Japan. So these vessels are very small and quite a lot. And that's why Busan receives like 12,000 container calls per year. 12,000. Do you know how many calls the Port of LA receives? Container calls? Only 2,000. We receive 12,000 container calls per year. The reason is there are a lot of feeder vessels calling in Busan, and that means those vessels will receive bunkering in Busan. And if you look at the price of low sulfur fuel oil, Busan is $8.5 cheaper than Shanghai. So we do have some opportunities. Of course, this is the price that I studied the May, so price might differ, but so you can get a feel for the brokering prices. And HMM receives 300,000 ton of bunkering Busan. And that is almost 17% of HMM's global bunkering amount. And HMM is second highest scrubber user by ratio among top 10 shipping lines, 86% ratio. That means they prefer HFO. And HFO price difference, Busan and Singapore is $25. And that means Singapore, if HMM receives that 17% of 1.7 bunkering in Singapore, they can save $7.5 million. But then again, they have to debit a lot to Singapore. When if they do not operate in PP covering Singapore, well, they cannot receive bunkering. So some people say that, well, whether a certain port is capable of providing green fuel, well, the future line of business routing might change. But I cannot agree. Cheaper bunkering is important, and it means quite a good deal of money. But that doesn't mean that they will go somewhere they do not have enough cargo. Line of business is 100% for cargo focus. If you cannot fill the vessel, they wouldn't go there. So even if some people say that green bunkering was going to be the key for the line of business, liner container shipping, container ships to call, but that's where I would think different. So why ship-to-ship simultaneous operation important? Why these bunkering ship has to be next to the motor vessels to supply bunkers? Why do these container ships call at certain oil terminals? Why can that happen? The reason is container business they are quite busy. Ships are quite busy. This is the real time schedule of 1 TP Trans-Pacific weekly service, real time schedule. 7 vessels are deployed, and each vessels have a fixed time schedule. We call it Shanghai, Pyongyang, Busan, Long Beach, Auckland, Busan, Gwangyang, Incheon, Yangsan, and each port they have a terminal they have a contract with. So Shanghai, Yangsan 4 terminal, Busan, Hanjin terminal, Long Beach, TTI terminal. And each terminal, they have a fixed time. They need to call in every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. and leave Thursday midnight. And Busan, Friday, 10 p.m. and leave Sunday morning. And they have to leave around this time to arrive at Long Beach the Thursday, 6 p.m. So these vessels are quite busy. They have their own schedule. So if these vessels, they have a contract. This vessel's contract terminal is number 1 and number 2. If the vessel, the vessel is supposed to handle a certain amount of time, amount of cargo handling. It cannot spend. It doesn't have any extra time to go somewhere else to receive bunkering. They don't have time. And if they are late, they have to speed up the vessel, and that means they need to consume more bunkers. That's why ship-to-ship simultaneous bunkering is important. It's a must. And some people say we need an old terminal in Busan, but I do not agree. We don't need old terminal. The reason is, let's assume that this terminal is a contract terminal, and this is an old terminal. After finishing their cargo handling and moving this vessel to pier, that requires additional money and time. Pilotage, tuggage, what about the time? They don't have time. These vessels don't have time. So, old terminal, I believe, is not necessary for container vessels. And if we do, well, they need to find other customers, not container vessels. Maybe container vessels that end its mission, maybe that works, but otherwise, no. So how bunkering is done in Busan? Well, like I told you, the bunkering, the vessels, the weekly service they cover in Singapore, these vessels are not bunkered at Busan. Vessels deployed in this routing, they will receive bunker. They don't have many options. And if they do, the bunkering vessel starts Busan. It takes 4 to 5 hours from Busan to Busan Newport, and the ships go alongside with another vessel and receive bunkering. It's called SIMOPS. They receive bunker while they're handling cargo. And the reason Busan was maybe cheaper than Shanghai is my assumption. The reason is because we have Busan. Busan is one of the largest oil complexes, and they have a lot of storage places. And because of the economy of scale, they can provide cheap fuel oil. So if the price that you saw in the previous slide is actually the price that includes this transportation price. So even we transfer all these hours, the price is cheaper than Shanghai because we have Busan. That's why we signed MOU with Busan Port Authority on green marine fuel bunkering. So let's look at weekly container service between Busan and Seattle-Tacoma, because the Seattle-Tacoma is the port that we have agreed to launch green shipping corridor. So 2022, in Egypt, COP25, I guess, they signed an agreement about the green shipping corridor between Busan and Seattle and Tacoma, and they call Seattle-Tacoma Northwest Seaport Alliance. Why do they call NWSA? The reason is Seattle-Tacoma are very close, but they're different municipal cities. They're governed by different cities. but they decided to combine container business because the volume is so small, 3.5 million. So they don't have competitive edge. So they decided to merge together the container business. And they decided to call the new entity WSA. As I look at the aerial photo for Tacoma, and they're in better position because they have all these storage places, which we do not have. In Busan Port, we don't have that storage place. And even in Port of Seattle, they have some storage place. I don't know what their purpose is, but I do not think the purpose is for bunkering because look at the price. I already covered it in the previous slide. Seattle is much more expensive. Bunkering price is much more expensive than Busan. So there are 7 weekly container services between Busan and Seattle Tacoma, and 11 shipping lines providing services, and there are 3 alliances. 3 services are operating 3 alliances, and these MSC, SM, MUS, Swire, these are independent carriers that are operating services. But we need to look at the alliances, PN3 and PN4 services, because the ministry is Green Corridor Task Force involves HMM, and HMM belongs to the alliance, and these 2 weekly services are operated by the alliance. So if we really see Green Corridor in 2027, it's very likely that we'll see the green ships moving around either in PN3 or PN4. And this is Busan, Mr. Kim, in previous slide, Mr. Kim said Busan had the first green methanol bunkering. Busan, it wasn't green methanol, but we did have first methanol ship-to-ship SIMOPS pilot project last month in 20 months. That was the first. And gray methanol, 3,000 tons per fuel. It into almost 11 hours. And one striking thing is that it took almost 3 hours for preparation and almost 10 hours of methanol supply. 2 weeks ago, I met colleagues from Hamburg, Germany, and he was surprised to know that it took 10 hours of methanol supply. And I told him, actually, I wasn't an expert, but I did know better than him. So I told him, normally 3,000 tons, 4,000 tons is the normal fueling amount, and it's not surprising. Normally, it's the time it takes. Bunkering takes this much of time, so you shouldn't be surprised. Challenges. What is challenges? Well, when I came across British Recorder, the first question is, who made this? Who made the term? What's the definition? I haven't found any definition yet. Maybe Oliver, if you do know, please let us know. What's the definition? British Recorder. It's very complex in container business. Because container business, there are many complexities. First, this is a PN3, the alliance operating weekly service. 9 vessels are deployed, and each vessels are around 13,000 TEU size. And HMM deployed 5 vessels. Yangming deployed 4 vessels. And these 2 member alliances, they don't deploy vessels. They just borrow these slots. And at the end of the day, they just share the cost of operating these vessels. So my first question is that, what if HMM had many new vessels, many big vessels, and that vessel is capable of using green fuels? But what about Yangming's vessels? If their vessels are very old and they're not capable of using green fuels, then can we call this green shipping corridor? Who decides that? I don't know. And then, what if, green fuel used for heddle only? This is heddle. When it comes back, we call backhaul. So, if only heddle is green fuel, when it comes back, conventional fuel, can you call this green shipping corridor? Nobody knows. Nobody told me. I'd have to ask this question. If there are no answers, maybe we have to make our own rules, make our own definitions. PN4 service, very simple. But this time, ONE deployed 2 vessels, Hapag 2 vessels, Yangming 2 vessels, and HMM, they deploy vessels. Well, it might have changed now, but 6 months ago, that was what it is. And HMM is borrowing slots, only borrowing slots. So, question here, what if, Hapag vessels, same vessel, Hapag vessel is new one, they can use green fuel, but ONE, Yangming, their vessels are so old they cannot use green fuel. What do you call this? It's a half green shipping corridor, like one third green shipping corridor. And what if shippers they don't want to pay for the bunkering premium? Green bunker is expensive. Right? Somebody say it's 5 times expensive, 4 times expensive, and they are unwilling to pay it. But the government is pushing hard for green shipping corridor. Then who's going to pay? And HMM now its majority shareholder is government, the ministry. So HMM might pay. But what if the other players, private players, if they say no, do we call that green shipping corridor? Or HMM green shipping corridor? So what if HMM is borrowing slots? If they withdraws from this service, well, now we lost green shipping corridor. So there are many complexities in the liner business. So we need to make some rules. I don't know. Some not regulation. I don't know. Some definitions. And in that respect, green shipping corridor in PCTC, like container or tanker or bulker, might be easier in my perspective. Maybe the next runner can share some insights. And other challenges, Busan Port terminal is very fragmented.
I'm sorry, you mentioned we have 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. But you know what? Mr. Kim from HMM, he said he's going to use 10 minutes less. So he said I can use 10 minutes more. So is that right, Mr. Kim? He promised me. So I'm going to use 10 more minutes. I was joking. I'm going to finish early. So fragmented terminal. Busan Port is very fragmented terminal. And well, it wasn't started as fragmented. It was a big terminal at its initial stage 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But now this is so big, it now looks small. The largest one is 2 kilometers long terminal. It was a big terminal, but now not so big by comparison. So it's bunkering operation-wise is not good as well. The other challenges is that only PNC terminal, only this terminal has ship-to-shore method of bunkering experience. And that means the crews and employees, the staff here have some experience and knowledge. They can do better. But all the other terminals, they have 0 experience. Maybe it's the same for the cruise vessels or other shipping lines. So since they don't have any experience and they don't have any manuals or protocols, first trial is always difficult. So if they go for first trial, they have to empty the nearby yard, container yard. They have to have a certain space from other vessels. So that hinders normal operations, and they might receive a lot of complaints from other shipping lines. So they are reluctant to receive this methanol trial project. They don't want to do it unless they have to. And that's also our challenge. And like I said, I'm not bunkering guy. I'm not fuel expert. So it's a new territory. All the new jargons and terminology is difficult. We have to study, and that's also a challenge. And finally, at the end of the day, who will pay? So from a layman perspective, I calculate it a little bit. So let's imagine that Busan, Vancouver, Tacoma, it's 8,000 kilometers long, and if the vessel speed is 17 knots, it takes 12 to 13 days, and it consumes about 800 metric tons of fuel oil. And that translates into $400,000. And if we assume that green fuel is 5 times expensive, it amounts to $2.5 million for the head-on from Busan to Tacoma. So let's assume that bunker premium is $2 million, and 10,000 TEU vessel is deployed, and 90% is utilized, 90% full. So, and the average export and import container cargo value is at Busan is $42K per TEU. That means that this vessel is moving $378 million of cargo value. And let's assume that the broker premium is $200 per TEU, and that divided by cargo value, each cargo value, like 42K. Bunkering premium is less than 0.5% of its cargo value. Not a lot. If the cargo is Nike, new Nike arrivals, new Nike shoes, about 3,070 shoes can fit in. In that case, bunker premium is 0.05% of cargo value. And think about the machineries. It's well over $1 million. In that case, bunker premium is less than 0.02% of cargo value. It's not much. But important thing is, it's not much. You can say, hey, our customer, you can say to your customer, please pay this bunker premium. I use green fuel. It's only a minimum of your cargo value you can pay. The problem is, however small that is, they will not pay because they have other options. They can go for other shipping lines who are not charging that premium. It's the same if you go to the market and if $1 is cheaper than other place, you go there. It's that simple. So the problem is we cannot force them to pay. But there is one that we can force them to pay. We already have experience. Sulfur cap 2020. Before the sulfur cap, like it was noticed like 5 to 8 years ago. IMO kept telling ship lines, we're going to charge, we're going to penalize those ships who do not use sulfur fuels, low sulfur fuels. And after 2020, you get penalty. And many people warning us, well, we might not have enough low sulfur fuels around the world, and we have a supply problem, and we might have an engine failure. Do we have that problem? Maybe very few, but most of the time, IMO or international community set the rules to follow shipping community, business industry, they follow. So currently the problem is there's no such mandatory, say you need to use this methanol, you need to use ammonia. That's the problem. We have this experience. Well, why can't we repeat this experience? That's my question. Thank you for your attention.